The single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine is getting a production boost from a rival. Drug maker Merck will help Johnson & Johnson manufacture the shots in an effort to speed up immunizations. It's an unusual agreement between two fierce rivals, and it could lead to a big increase in the supply of the vaccine, always a good thing. Here's what the White House had to say about that effort today. Take a listen.
The U.S. government will facilitate this partnership in several key ways, including invoking the Defense Production Act to equip two Merck facilities to the standards necessary to safely manufacture the vaccine, and asking the Department of Defense to provide daily logistical support to strengthen Johnson & Johnson's effort.
And Bloomberg News reporter Riley Griffin is an expert on all things J&J. She joins us now. Riley, thank you so much for joining us. To start us off, tell me about today's news. How will this rivalry-turned partnership affect both the manufacturing and the rollout timeline for these shots?
Well, Johnson & Johnson and Merck are undoubtedly two of the largest pharmaceutical manufacturers in the world, and now they are both bringing their firepower to the table. What Merck is going to do is actually aid with two parts of J&J's process. One is the underlying drug substance of the vaccine, and the other part is a critical stage, the final stage known as fill and finish, where that drug substance is placed into vials and then shipped out. And so Merck is aiding with this process. We learned today that together with Merck and through other means, J&J is actually accelerating its timeline. They've promised the U.S. 100 million doses of the one-shot vaccine by the end of June. Now we're hearing today that that could come as soon as the end of May. So a big development that means people across the country could get this one-shot vaccine. Remember, that's a full regimen earlier than anticipated.
Right, Riley, and like you mentioned, we just heard President Biden announce we'll have enough vaccine supply for 300 million Americans by the end of May. Does today's news about J&J play into that math at all for the timeline there?
Yes, I think this is the first time we're seeing the Biden administration actually account for J&J's doses in its estimates. Thus far, they've been projecting timelines for the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna vaccines, both of which require 2 doses. Between the Trump administration and the Biden administration, we've seen the U.S. secure 300 million doses of each of those products. So add another 100 million of J&J's vaccine to boot, and remember, only one shot is required, right, and you get to a much higher level in the near term. What we don't know about Johnson & Johnson is whether or not the U.S. might exercise additional options for supply, because they've got that $100 million contract, but they could secure more as well.
Right, and something I'm always curious about with the vaccine rollout is even though we have enough shots, it's still difficult to get those shots into people's arms. Do you know of any upcoming plans to help with the distribution of J&J's shots?
Well, what's so novel about J&J, beyond it having created a one-shot vaccine, is that its vaccine doesn't require cold chain. That means freezers that can keep, say, like the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, the shot at ultra-cold subarctic temperatures. It can actually be kept in a regular refrigerator, which is amazing because that lessens the burden on the healthcare system. And you can imagine a world in which this is better distributed across to rural America or to the homeless or to far-flung communities.
And Riley, one thing I think a lot of people are understandably confused about is the efficacy of J&J's shot. Can you walk me through how it compares to Pfizer and Moderna's, and basically what you would say to a listener who's worried about getting this vaccine compared to the others?
It's a fabulous question, and one that the company has also been tasked with answering. I was speaking with J&J's CEO just yesterday about this. Basically, what we know is that J&J's shot was 72% effective here in the US, 66% effective globally, but the number to note is that it was 85% effective across the board in preventing severe disease and 100% effective in preventing hospitalizations and deaths. I want our listeners to take a step back and think about what the actual public health role of a shot is, and it's to prevent you from getting really sick and burdening the healthcare system and ultimately dying. And J&J's shot does that in a really fantastic way. It gets the job done. The thing is, you can't compare numbers apples to apples to Pfizer or Moderna. And that's because these trials were conducted in different places and at different courses in the pandemic. J&J's notably was at the point in which the pandemic was really hitting its peak, and incidents around the globe were peaking off. And so you might be thinking it's not 90% plus effective. I would say take a step back, get the shot you have access to first, and know that J&J's will do what it needs to in keeping you out of the hospital.
And Riley, really quickly here, you mentioned that these clinical trials took place around the world. I'm wondering what you can tell us about how J&J's shots do in relation to variants that we're seeing pop up around the globe.
Another great question. We did see efficacy slightly wane in Brazil and in South Africa. So that is something to keep watch of and something J&J is studying as well. But again, in preventing severe disease, the shot was equally effective in those regions. So it didn't sidestep the vaccine altogether. J&J, like Moderna, like Pfizer, are focused on developing next generation versions of its vaccine. Right. And we still don't know durability of any of these shots. And so that ultimately means we're likely to get a booster. So once you've gotten your first regimen, get prepared, because next year we're likely to get another.
Exciting note to end on there, Riley. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your reporting with us as always.
The biggest stories the moment they happen from around the globe. Subscribe to Bloomberg Quick Take now for insight in an instant.